Hi, everyone. Let's talk about why your Pinterest account isn't getting any action and not driving you any traffic to any of the places that you want it to drive traffic to. And you have said, I put all this effort and time in, and I'm pinning every day, and it's not doing anything for me. What am I doing wrong? Because I have had people leave comments about their Pinterest account's not working or whatever, and I've done everything I can. Whenever you say I've done everything I can, there's probably more that you can do, or you're doing something wrong. You're doing everything that you know how to do, but it's not the right thing. So the main reason I would say why people's Pinterest accounts, quote unquote, don't work is that maybe your niche is not good on Pinterest, which if we are selling products, you can make it work on Pinterest. But sometimes, like if you're selling tractors, maybe not. All right. That might not be the audience for it. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that you're just not doing the pins the right way and your pins suck. And I hate to say that, but I've seen a lot of people who say, "Oh, why isn't my Pinterest account working?" And I go to look and their pins suck, and there's no other way to say it. What I would think of there is, instead of pinning 30 crappy pins every day, which a lot of people think that if you just, spray pins all over the place, something's going to stick. It doesn't work that way. You have to design pins. You have to think about the customer, and I say customer meaning the people who are actually on Pinterest who are not pinning because of their business. These are normal Pinterest users who are just there to have fun on Pinterest. They're there to get ideas. They're there to find inspiration. They're there to look at pretty pictures. You have to think about why they would click on your pin. And if your pin sucks, they're not going to click on it. So that's really the main reason, honestly, is that your pins suck. All right. The third reason would be that you haven't given it enough time. And when I say give it enough time, I'm not talking about a week. I'm not talking about a month. I'm talking about at least 4 months for an established account, for one pin to actually start getting traffic consistently. I'm talking about 8 months to a year for a newer account, and it takes a long time, and it could take up to 2 years. I mean, this is Pinterest. When they say it's a long game, they're not kidding. Pinterest is a weird system. It's a search engine, but it's a visual search engine. So people are not just searching for things and then clicking on the quote unquote best result. They're searching for things and then they're clicking on the most eye-catching result or the result with the most eye-catching title or sometimes clickbaity titles. And I have a Pinterest class. You can sign up for it. And we were talking about this in one of the lives because we do workshops every week in the Pinterest Facebook group that's for the class. But someone was saying, I need to get over my fear of clickbait. And it feels very clickbaity when you first start writing Pinterest titles for your pins and designing them the right way, because you're basically trying to get someone's attention as they're sitting there on their phone, scroll, 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 scroll. They go by very quickly, and you need to do something to make them want to click on your pin. And sometimes that means clickbaity. Okay, now you have to pay off at the end. Clickbait isn't always bad. As long as you give the people what you say in your pin title or with the description, then that's fine. But if you promise them something and then that's not what they click on to see and it's something else, or you say, I promise that this result will happen if you click on my pin and it doesn't, then that's a bad clickbait experience. But if it's a good clickbait experience and you're actually giving them something that you say you're going to, then that's okay. But let's go back to reason number 2, because I think that's really the main thing. Now, I use Pin Generator to create my pins. And I also have some templates that I use in Photoshop. So I use Photoshop and Pin Generator, but I don't schedule them from Pin Generator. And I'm going to get rid of Buffer. I've been using Buffer to schedule my social media, but I'm not going to do that anymore because all of these platforms now have their own schedulers. And I'm going to start using the native schedulers on each platform because why not? They're free. And the reason that I do the native scheduling from Pinterest is that it's not connected to an API, which is basically if you have a company that works with Pinterest, you can connect to Pinterest, but all kinds of weird stuff can happen in between those two companies. So I'm just going to go directly to Pinterest and create my pins there, but I'm actually making the images with Pin Generator because it's faster. And I have templates set up. You can set up your own templates in there now. So I have designed my own templates that I use so that it doesn't look like every other Pin Generator pin. And I can go on Pinterest now, and I say good for Ollie who owns Pin Generator, because I see a lot of pins now that they're Pin Generator templates. So I'm like, good for you. I'm glad that your business is successful, but it just means that you see a lot of pins that look the same because they're using the basic template. That's not necessarily good. So I create my own templates that I then use for my own pins. They look a little bit different, but there is kind of a Pinterest standard, right? So the first standard is the size. So you want to have a vertical pin, 1,000 by 1,500. It's basically like a 2 by 3. But if you upload something that's less than 1,000 pixels across the top, it gives you a little message that says, we recommend 1,000 pixels for the best result. It doesn't necessarily have to be that, but I do most things in 1,000 by 1,500, and that's fine, all right? I don't upload a ton of video pins, but those are also good, except that video pins have a little downfall, which I'll talk about in a minute. But you want to make sure that you're doing a variety of pins. So you can do idea pin. Idea pins are not a thing anymore. They just call them pins now. But you can do pins that have multiple pages, like idea pins used to be. You can still upload things in the longer idea pin size. They're just not called idea pins anymore. But you can have multiple page pins. You can have just a one-page standard pin. You can do video pins. And there's a lot of options basically, but you have to think about what the customer intent is. And again, customer is just the person who's on Pinterest looking at pins. When people go on Pinterest, they're looking for ideas, they're looking for inspiration, they're looking for pretty things, they just want to waste some time and look through some stuff on Pinterest, or they're planning parties, they are looking for gifts. There's a lot of activity on Pinterest around parties and accessories and weddings. And Pinterest used to be very wedding heavy, which is why I got into it. I was on Pinterest when they first sent you an invitation. You had to have an invitation because it was brand new. You have to think, why is someone on Pinterest? Why would they click this pin? And what are they going to do with it once they click on it? Because I think that's the part people forget. Pinterest is an engagement platform. Okay, so the Pinterest algorithm will show people things based on what they have clicked on in the past and what they have saved on their boards. And it also shows things based on the other things on those boards that they've saved to and what boards they have. So there's a lot that Pinterest looks at when they're deciding what to show to people. And you have to think about this as you're pinning. You have to think about what board you're pinning to. You have to think about, what the title, the description, the alt text is important on Pinterest. What do the text on the pin say? I mean, it reads everything. Pinterest reads text on the images. So you have to think about all of this when you're putting a pin in place and you're doing the SEO for it, and there is SEO that goes into it. But the most important thing is, what is the person who looks at this pin going to do? So let's say that you have a video pin, and this is okay. Let's use a video pin because that's a good example. A lot of people will just watch a video pin and they won't save it because they've watched it. They don't need to save it. That's engagement. That's an engagement stat on Pinterest, so that will count as engagement, but it doesn't count as a save. All right, so Pinterest looks at all the engagement stats, but impressions don't mean anything. So when people say, I get 1 million impressions, I get 50 million impressions, like that's fantastic for you, but impressions mean nothing because you want the person to actually engage with the pin and then go to the link that you want them to go to. That's the most important engagement that you want. That's our goal with Pinterest, is to get traffic off of Pinterest to our sites. So when you're designing your pins, you need to keep that in mind and say, is this person who clicks on this pin actually going to do anything about it? Are they going to go to my website because of this? And if you give them a video pin that is a tutorial, it tells the whole story, they don't have to leave Pinterest. They've got the information, they don't need to leave. Now, when you're designing product pins that you want people to go to your products, one thing that you can do is try to not just say, here's my product, buy it. You want to put it in context. And what I do with my pins is I usually will find whatever kind of event it goes to, what kind of design of a party would this be a good theme for, that kind of thing. And I'll use those types of keywords in the pin just to see if it gets picked up by the Pinterest algorithm and shown to those people who are searching for that. So since I sell edible butterflies, I do a lot of pins for baby showers and birthdays, and there's some other events too, but those are primarily the two that I've been targeting recently. Now I'll target some keywords for a while and then I'll move on. The third part of this is the time. You can pin something today, it will not get any impressions. This is not the same as Instagram or Facebook where you immediately get likes. That's not going to happen on Pinterest. You might get a few impressions, and that's good. And if your account is really established and you have a lot of people who follow you, your pins are going to be shown to more people, but it doesn't mean that they're all going to engage with it. So you might get immediate impressions, but no engagement. But it might take literally 4 weeks before you start seeing actual activity on that, and 4 to 8 months before you see consistent activity. And when I look back at my Pinterest stats, I can see that there is a definite timeline. And it takes a while for Pinterest to get things into the system and categorized. And they do that in several ways. I go over that in my class. It's very weird. It's weird and interesting at the same time. But it puts it into the system, it categorizes it, it starts showing it to people, but that takes time. It doesn't happen immediately when you pin something. So you have to be patient and you have to SEO things the right way. You have to keep the customer intent in mind, and you have to design the pin to make people want to click off of Pinterest to find out more information. And when people say, I've done everything I can, and I look at their Pinterest account and it's all basically product photos from Etsy that have not been designed for Pinterest, I know exactly why. It's because your pins suck. Okay, so keep all that in mind when you're designing your pins. If you really want to get into this deeper, join my Pinterest class. If you have questions about this, just leave them underneath here. Give this video a thumbs up, and I will talk to you later.